So my name is Allison. I'm a technical writer for the Google Workspace platform. So I write developer documentation for a lot of our APIs. I'm especially passionate about the Google Chat API, and that's primarily where I focus. So at the happy hour or whenever we see each other next, I'd love to hear about what you're building, or if you have questions or feedback about the documentation, let me know. Vinay?
Hi, I'm Vinay. I'm an Eng converted to DevRel because I love building things. I love everything API, and after the session or during the happy hour, if you have any questions about Workspace APIs, please come find us, and we're happy to answer any questions.
There is so much opportunity right now to build on the Google Chat platform and with generative AI. I know that's the pretty obvious what we've been talking about today with generative AI, but especially in my opinion, Google Chat as a platform is there's so much going on, there's so much development, and in my opinion, it's one of the most compelling workspace applications to build on for generative AI use cases. So what makes Google Chat such a great platform for generative AI? So as a messaging platform, chat is where questions get answered. So in an organization, these chat spaces bring communities together. They inspire really interesting discussions. They are where great ideas are created, originated, and grow. So for large organizations, you can really think of Google Chat as this expansive living knowledge base for the organization. But if you think about it, on any given day, how many messages do you send and how many do you receive? How can you actually operate on that data? There's not a lot of ways to do that until generative AI has come into the picture, right? So we actually have the best opportunity now more than ever to use these messages and build on them as developers. So this extensive, persistent, and unstructured data, which are chat messages, were previously really hard to understand at an organizational level. But with generative AI, that's what they thrive on. That's the kind of data they use all the time. And you can ask them, or you can prompt Gemini, and you can actually use that data for a lot of interesting use cases to solve organizational problems. So, okay, maybe I've convinced you. Google Chat has great data, really valuable data that you can act on, right? But why would my application need to be in chat? Why would I build an interface in chat? And that means, why would I build a Google Chat app? So first of all, this is a very obvious statement. I like using emojis too. I'm a chat user. That's how I go. But anyway, obviously it's conversational. But if you think about it, almost all the use cases of when you use generative AI, when you talk to Gemini, you're in a chat messaging interface, right? So across Google Workspace, Google Chat is, in my opinion, the best interface for creating these conversations with AI agents. So in this example here, you can book a rental car, and you're talking to an AI agent, just like you would be talking to a regular person or a support agent, right? And we actually have native integrations with Google Cloud Dialogflow CX, where you could create an AI agent and deploy it directly into Google Chat. So you can create this experience and train it or bring it data from your organization or anywhere and bring it right into chat. And that's a native integration that we have. So the other piece, or another reason for Google Chat apps, and I know other sessions have alluded to this, is you're bringing AI to chat users that might not normally have it. So not everyone has access to Gemini yet. So by doing this, by building chat apps, you're bringing this AI experience for Google Chat users in a really custom way. So we have to remember that people don't always have access to the Gemini sidebar and Workspace. And so this is a great opportunity to bring that to Google Workspace and Google Chat. And then finally, we know that these standard out-of-the-box Gen AI models don't always get it right. And I'm sure some of you are building internally for your organization. You might know of a really interesting use case that you want to solve, and you want to customize it. And you might want to control some of that access the app has to the messaging data, right? So you might be able to curate what the access it has to your data, and then create this really customized experience with a Google Chat app that solves directly the problem you're looking to solve. And I'm sure we've seen a lot of examples from other people today. This is just another example of why building the custom application makes a lot of sense. OK, so we've explained the why. You're probably wondering how, right? We're talking at such a high level, and that's what we really want to get into next. So today we're going to be focusing on a really interesting use case that I think you can really take with you and apply to a lot of different scenarios for your organization or as a developer in general. And that is transforming chat messaging history into a working knowledge base for an organization. So in this example, we're going to be looking at something you're all probably familiar with, which is joining a company as a new employee, so the onboarding process. So let's say you're at a growing company who's regularly onboarding new employees each year. To connect these new hires, your team has created a chat space where they can meet each other, share about their experiences, and of course, ask questions. The challenge is that new hires have a lot of questions, right? And they tend to ask a lot of similar questions. So your HR team is spending a lot of time, they're space managers, and they're curating and moderating the space. They're spending a lot of time answering these questions, and they tend to be similar questions. So they're kind of repeating themselves, and it's really resource intensive, right? The other thing that's really kind of a missed opportunity is that new hires learn a lot by doing it themselves. And so it would be great for HR to be able to learn from these collective experiences, but there's really no way to do that unless they interview each new hire. So it would be really great to be able to take this collective knowledge, everything they're discussing and learning in the space, and take insights from that and learn about it so you can improve the experience for future new hires, right? So as a developer, how can you solve this problem for the organization? Today, we're going to demo a chat app that uses generative AI to interpret the past conversations from previous new hires and then provide instant support whenever new employees in the space are starting to ask questions. So how would you build a chat app that addresses this and does this? We're going to talk about a few features and some technologies at a high level, and then later Vinay is going to again, I promise, the code is coming. We're going to get into the code later, so you'll see more of the details. So the app first needs to be able to store message history, because this is going to be how they have this collective knowledge base that they're going to the chat app will be able to leverage and answer questions based on that information. So to do that, we need to have a chat app, of course, that is built. We're using an HTTP service that's running on Google Cloud Functions, and then we're going to store the messages as a database in Google Cloud Firestore. Next, it needs to be able to listen and respond to new messages in the space. So to do that, we have the Google Workspace Events API, which will create a subscription in the space. And so anytime new message activity happens, a new message, updated messages, deleted messages, the chat app is going to know about it. And then when these new messages come in, we need a way for Gemini to come in to tell us, is there a question here, and how do we answer it? So to access Gemini at this point, we're going to be calling the Vertex AI API. And we're going to ask Gemini to try to answer any incoming questions. And then finally, we know that generative AI and in general, like apps don't always get it quite right. So we need a way to flag answers from the chat app that aren't quite right. So like when you're in Gemini and there's like the thumbs up, thumbs down buttons, right? You need a way to qualify if the answer is, or if the chat app is actually answering the question. So in this case, we are going to mention a space manager so they can jump in and answer the question better than the chat app's response. So in that case, we need an accessory widget, which is a button that just goes below the response from the chat app. And then they can click that button, and it will mention a space manager who can jump in and answer the question for them.
So I'll iterate what Allison said. There are three main user journeys that we're interested. First one is when we add a space to the when we add an app to the chat space. Second one is when we post a question or a message, and then the app will determine if it's a question and try to answer that. The last one is, this is my favorite user journey. I don't know how many people have been on a call and you got these robotic messages and you get tired and you kept saying customer support, and finally a human answers. That's my favorite part. Like if you're really tired of the robotic answers, you can ask help, and a human will hopefully help you. Okay, so I have the architecture up there. It's just an overview. We'll be having two cloud functions. One, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we'll have two cloud functions. One is to just handle adding to the space and handling anything like when someone requests for help. The second one is the one where the app asynchronously listens to the messages and reacts to if it's a question, or if it's not a question, it'll update our chat history. I don't want you to pay too much attention to the architecture, because we'll talk over it as we go through the code. So first, this is how our main app is built. So whenever we add an app to a space, there are things that it does. The first thing we want to take care is when an app is added to a space. So we want to handle that. And if you remember correctly, there are 4 main things we have to do when an app is added to the space. First, we need to create a Firestore database where we'll store the history of all the messages that have been coming through. Second is we need to create a subscription so that the app can listen to future messages and update it as the messages are coming through. Then the third thing is we want to make sure it is able to ask for help. You can ask for help. And the fourth one is make sure users know that an app was added to a space and what its purpose is. I have so many times someone added an app to a space, and I have no idea what that is for. I don't know, Alison, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think just this first cloud function is handling the app logic for like interaction. So chat apps can be app mentioned, added to spaces, removed from spaces. They can have interfaces that you can click, like buttons that run other functions or populate other cards. So really what this is doing is it's handling all those interactions. So anytime the chat app will get an event object, which we call an interaction event, and that's how it handles that logic. So right now, whenever a user adds it to the space, it's going to get this type of event called added to space, and that will kick off all the logic that Vinay was just talking about to get it all set up in the space itself.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's take a look.
So yeah, let's take a look on what it's doing. So once we add it to a space, the first thing, I'll create a Firestore collection named after the space. And this is very important because we don't want to have messages from another space kind of come over through the other space. We want to keep them all separate so they're clean. They're not trying to answer a question from a different space.
Yeah, can you imagine it was like asking a question. It's like, actually, this person over here, and you're not in the space, don't worry about it, but I'll tell you all about that other space's answer. No, so we wanted to know exactly only the knowledge from the collective space it's been added to. Yeah.
Exactly.
Great.
And then the next thing we're doing is we're getting the history of all the messages in the space and then adding to our Firestore collection. And this is just using the chat API. And all it's doing is we're initializing the client, listing all the messages that have come through so far through the space, and then filtering them out because we don't want any robotic responses. If there are any.
Only from people.
Yeah, only from people, and then adding them to our Firestore collection. And remember, there's a reason we're doing create and update, because you are able to update your, unlike Twitter, I think, or X, sometimes you cannot update messages. So at least for chat space, if a message is updated, we want to make sure like our answers are updated as well. The third thing we're doing is create space subscription. This is where the Workspace Events API comes in place. And this is kind of one interesting thing that me and Alison work on. We have Meet Events API as well. So
yeah, the Google Workspace Events API is near and dear to our hearts. We launched this together collectively. He created the code samples. I wrote the docs. It's a great thing. I see some Meet people here. You know that API. It's awesome. So basically, it allows you to subscribe to activity across different Workspace applications. And right now, it features Meet and Chat. So if you want to know any activity in chat, your chat app can use user authentication, subscribe to new members in a space, new messages, like updates to the space itself. And in Meet, it's, you can find out if a participant joined or left. So it's really great because with chat, otherwise you're only getting events about the interactions directly with the chat app. But this allows the chat app to be passively listening for activity in the space and have interactive features and do useful things based on that activity. So it's a key element of this app for sure.
Yeah, so to iterate, there are a lot of events you can listen for or subscribe to. But for our use case, we're only interested in the 3 main events. One is when a message gets created. That's how we know if someone posted a question or not. The second one is we want to update the message. If someone updates a message, we want to update our database too, so make sure like all the information in our database, in our knowledge base is updated too. The last one is, let's say someone posted some message incorrectly, get an incorrect information, and they ended up deleting it, so we want to make sure our knowledge base is updated as well.
Yeah, otherwise the chat app could respond with a message that was deleted, which people don't, they deleted it for a reason. So you want it to reflect only the current state of the messages.
Yeah, and this is also a Workspace API, so you can use the Workspace Events API to subscribe and create subscription. Very cool. I love it, and we've used it a lot.
So many opportunities you
Yes.
can use it for, yeah.
And then the next thing we're doing is after we create our subscription, we go ahead and post a helpful message. The app is thanking the user for adding the app to the space. And then it's also telling what its purpose is. Sometimes an app is added, but you have no idea what it's doing. So it's like, hey, I'm here to help you answer your questions. And then if I ask directly, it will answer your questions asynchronously. So that's a cool thing to do.
Yeah, best practice for sure.
Yes. Now we're going to move to the second user journey. Now someone posts a question, right? Like, what's going to happen once someone posts a question? So that's where our second cloud function comes in place. This is where we're listening all the messages. So one place we were subscribing to messages, and then the second cloud function is listening to the messages. So there are a lot of kind of events we're interested in, but I want you to focus on the one when a message gets created. Update is the same thing, we just update our message. But here's how we handle the messages when they're coming through the space. So when we get our message, first thing we do is update it. Like if it's a new message, create it. If it's a message that was already posted, we update with new information. The second thing we do, which is kind of interesting, is where our Gemini comes in place.
Yeah,
right?
how do we know if it has a question or not? Yeah.
Yes. So what we do is we have something that handles the AI action.
All right, Gemini time.
Yeah.
Everyone get excited again. It's back.
Yes. So for here, I'll walk you through what's happening, and then we'll look at how we're using Gemini to get what we want it to do for us. So first thing, when a message comes, first we're interested, is this even a question? I don't know if you have programmatically tried to do this, figure out if something is a question. There are a lot of regex involved, a lot of, I guess, phrases involved. Like, hey, does this phrase mean? Yeah.
It's the worst.
So it's kind of like it's too much work. I've done that. I hated it, and sometimes I was like, why is this code not trying to think this is a question, right?
And like really cool young people ask questions in like ways you don't even understand yet,
Yeah.
Like they don't have question marks. And I know that's not that, I mean, everyone does that. But you know what I'm saying? Like it's a language model. It understands language and however you say it. So it's going to pick up on all the nuances of how people ask questions, which is really, really useful. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm going to walk through the whole AI action, and then we'll look how we kind of coerce Gemini to give us what we want. So let's say this returns true, that hey, whatever message was posted by user was a question. Then what we do is, if it was not a question, we just bail out. First thing we do is get all the messages we got so far from our knowledge base. Like, hey, Firestore, give me all the messages that have been given so far. One key difference I want you to really look here is like by the time you're fetching a message from your Firestore, someone might have posted a question. But we want to make sure the AI only base it on what it has in the Firestore, because sometimes messages are incorrect, like they have no time to be updated. You could change it, but we prefer it doing this way. Second thing is we're using Gemini through Vertex AI to see if the Gemini can answer this question. And I'll go through what the prompt looks like. And then finally, we create the message that the app posts through the Google Workspace API, Google Chat API to post back into the space. We'll look at that in a moment too. So let's first look at our first Gemini fun part, which is how do we tell Gemini to look for a question? So what we do is, in a shell, we're just calling the Vertex API to call predict. But the main thing we want to do is the prompt. There's all think prompt engineering, which is very cool. There's also a book about it. I don't know if we're distributing or it's online. So here's the prompt. Basically,
this is when it is a question, right?
Yes.
Okay,
This is the first one. Yeah. So go ahead.
Oh yeah. No. Oh yeah. Exactly. Yes.
Yes.
So
This is the question prompt.
Yes. This is any new message gets. We're going to prompt Gemini the first time for any new message that comes in.
Yes.
Yes.
So when a message comes through, we ask Gemini, hey, someone posted this in a chat space. please tell me if it's a question or not, right? And we wanted to make it very simple for us to be able to parse it. So like, just reply yes or no. Don't give me too much information. Say, yes, this is a question or no. And then what we end up doing is, once we get a response from it, where is it? Once we get a response from it, all we do is like, hey, does it contain this word yes, right? If it contains the word yes, then we can predictably say like, yes, this was a question.
So this means the chat app will respond to this message.
Exactly.
It includes yes. It's no.
Well, it'll respond either way.
Right, exactly.
Right, but it'll either respond with an answer or without an answer. So we'll look at that again.
Exactly, yeah.
So that was our first Gemini use case. The second one is my favorite one, which is where it tries to answer the question. So here what we're doing is the same thing. We're creating a prompt. It's kind of lengthy. And I'll show you how. One thing I want to mention. When we're building this app, the hardest part was not building the chat API app using it. The hardest part was us tweaking the Gemini prompt, so it gives us exactly what we want. I'll show you how long of a prompt it is. So this is what I'm telling Gemini. It's like telling a toddler, right? A lot of instructions.
It really feels that way. You got to repeat yourself.
Yeah. So basically what I'm saying, like, so one of the key things about Gemini prompts are you need to give it a persona, which is very important. You need to tell Gemini what it is. So you start with, hey, you are an AI knowledge assistant, so it knows what its purpose is. The second thing you need to do is give it a goal. Every Gemini prompt needs a goal that kind of helps it make sure like it's doing its job. So for us, our goal for the Gemini app was your purpose is to answer questions based solely on the information provided. Gemini is very helpful. It'll
It's too
try.
helpful.
Yeah.
It wants to help so bad, even if it can't.
So we have to chorus it. It's like, hey, there's a lot of things like, hey, please do not fabricate information. We don't want you to fabricate information. And we also want to tell it, like, if you don't have any information, just say, I don't have the information.
That's okay.
Yes.
It's okay, Gemini. You don't have to know everything.
Everything.
Like,
Yes.
It's so helpful.
And then we don't want like an essay of a message. Like I don't like read when I'm asking someone a question and someone gives me like a 2-page answer. I'm not going to read it because I just want a quick answer so I can carry on with what am I doing. So the second thing we're trying is like, hey, be as short as possible. I don't want a big answer, right? And this is important. Gemini by default will return your responses as Markdown. So you have to. There's no other way. I couldn't find it. If you find it, come talk to me later. But the only way is like keep pleading. I had to plead it 2 times. Like, hey, don't give me Markdown. The first time it didn't listen, so I had to be like, hey, this is very important for my audience. I don't want Markdown.
And actually, I was asking Steve about this too. Like, there are ways to kind of curate the response if you knew, like, the yes or no answer we got. You could be like, tell me the title of this message. That, like, you could break it down if you really wanted to add more logic into the message.
Yes.
You could try to parse down that mark. It depends on how much you care about that, right? But yeah, there's a lot of ways you can kind of handle that, again, for the user, and then to control the response from Gemini. There's a lot of options for you, but we were just begging it, basically, not to use Markdown and to be concise. That was our workaround.
Yes. So yeah, there goes, essentially what I wanted to say is a lot of things goes into the prompt engineering. It might take you a few iterations to get it right. This took us few weeks to get it right. Maybe it'll take you shorter. But yeah, you want to keep iterating so it gives you the answers you need. Yeah, and then let's go look what we do next after we have done.
All right, so yeah, we have the answer from Gemini.
So yeah, we have the answer. And then if it doesn't have answer, we still post it. And this is how we do it. This is also using the chat API. Essentially what we're telling it is, hey, here's the text. And this is very key, the thread, because we want to make sure it's answering the correct question. Because if you don't do this, it might just post on the chat space as a new chat answer, and you have no idea where is this coming from, right? So we want to make sure it's threaded and it's answering the question in the thread. And this is where what I call the customer support accelerate widget. This is where if users don't like the answer or they didn't get an answer, they can call customer support, right? Say, hey, like, can you come help me out, please? So
Yeah,
it's
it
like,
could be ratings. It could be like you could use this to validate the response from Gemini in many ways, just like you see in the Gemini UI. So we have a button because we just want someone to bring in another answer, but you could rate the messages. You could have people, assess the value. Like, people upvote a certain message a lot. There's a lot more you can do with this logic. But
Yeah.
so it's really useful for Gen AI use cases is the button that you can put at the bottom of these text messages.
yes, essentially you can have way more than one button, and each button can do whatever you want it to do, whether upvote, downvote, anything that. For us, we're just like, hey, please get customer support.
Yeah.
And then once someone clicks that button, which is essential, now it goes from the events app, right? It becomes from asynchronous. It goes to the app where it handles that action. So that happens right here. So once someone clicks help, get help, the app will asynchronously will post back into the same thread saying like, hey, first we'll look for a space manager, whoever is owning the chat space, like, hey, can you please help answer this individual's question? So then
Yeah,
I'll
this
post
is
back.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is an interaction. So this is where it will get an event anytime someone clicks a button, right, or is added to the space. So these interactive logic is, so the chat app will always get these kind of things, and it can respond synchronously to those responses. So that's how you handle any interaction in like user interfaces, for example. So this is like, just another way for it to respond right away with a message.
Yep. So we looked through the code, all our 3 main user journeys, adding the app to the space, getting help through the asynchronous app, through the subscription, and then being able to get help if the app cannot help us. I think now we can,
we can
this
look at it again, a reminder, full screen again.
Right, now we'll go and do the demo. This is the second favorite part. Let's see if it's going to work for us. Okay, so we have, we created this chat space just for the demo. Imagine this is for new hires who have just joined, and then there are a lot of questions and answers that may happen, and if I'm the person onboarding new hires, I don't want to answer the same question over and over. I'll get tired. Obviously, like, hey, look through the thread. People are lazy. They want to go through all the chat history to find the answer, right? Sometimes search doesn't do a good job of finding the answer. So how about as an onboarding individual, like a person who's onboarding new hires, I just want the Gemini to do the work for me, right? The AI to do for. So first thing, as I said, we'll add the app. So I just search it by the name. And this is essentially telling me what the app's going to do, right? It's saying, hey, this app will be able to read, reply, and send new messages. And I'm fine with it because I want it to do that for me. So I'm heading to the space. And remember, behind the scene, there are multiple things happening. First, it's creating the Firestore database. Second, it's fetching all the messages from our chat history, putting in the database. Third, it's creating the Workspace events subscription. And finally, it's posting the message saying like, hey, thank you for adding me. And here's my purpose to answer your questions. So let's try it out. Let me ask a question. I know I answered someone earlier. So I'm interested in mentorship. I love doing mentoring. I have mentored other people, and I like to be mentored too. And so I'm curious if there's a mentorship program. Is there a mentor program that I can join? So behind the scenes, it created an event of message created. Now the app figured out if it's a question or not. And if it was a question, it's going to answer it. And if it doesn't think it's a question, it won't do anything, but looks like it replied. So it might have an answer, or it might not have an answer. So let's find out. Okay, it found an answer. It says, we have a mentorship program. Here's the link, and it will be matched on my interest and goals. So yeah, it was able to answer my question. Allison, do you have any question you'd like to answer?
I sure do. Yeah, as soon as I join a company, I want to know when I can take vacation and how much vacation I can get. So how many vacation days do I get?
Right, this is doing the same thing, trying to figure it out. Let's see if it was able. Yep, it was able to answer your question.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to ask one. So we know what's in the history, so we know if it knows the answer. So let's ask one we know it doesn't have. So I like to meet other people who speak Spanish, and if there's like a Spanish community or group. So I'm going to ask if there's a Spanish club. Let's see.
All right, let's see if it answered your
All
question.
right, let's see if it didn't. Hopefully, it didn't answer the question. Yes, thank you for not answering the question. It tried to still be helpful. It couldn't help itself, right? But no, it didn't have the information. So what I'm going to do is this is the get help opportunity. So okay, maybe this question hasn't been asked before. In this case, this is why I can't answer the question. I'm going to click the accessory widget. And then because Vinay's the space manager, it's going to mention him and ask him to answer the question. So why don't you, do you know if there's a Spanish club?
Lucky for Allison, I do know the answer for this.
Or is that like a corny, like a commercial? Like,
Yeah. So yeah, I know the answer, so I'll
Yeah.
answer her question. Yes, there is a Spanish club that meets on Tuesdays at 2 p.m.
All right, so it should be in the database.
Now,
it's now
yeah.
a collective knowledge again. So I'm going to ask the question one more time. Let's see if it figured it out.
Okay, let's see.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, it knows the answer from like 30 seconds ago. So yeah, exactly. Cool. And actually, one other thing I wanted to show, just like a funny like meta use case for chat apps. Do you want to show the messaging history?
So when we're preparing for this presentation, we had to kind of, as I say, like iterate over the prompt multiple times. So and we had to kind of practice this, make sure like the flow
Gemini.
works. And one of the pain point we had was we had to create this space manually, add all the questions, or add all the answers. So we had to iterate over this process so many times I got tired. So my engineering brain was like, hey, we can automate this.
We're engineers. Right? We work on APIs.
Yes.
I was like doing it manually.
I was like,
what are you doing?
I just want to run a script. I want to click a button, and I wanted to create a space with all the questions, all the answers, adds me and her, and me and Allison as the members, and then post like a really good welcome to the team image with a message. So I created a script.
So yeah, you can see when it's a chat app, so if you go down a little bit, so he's using user authentication, he's doing all this, so it's as him, right?
Yes.
You're automating something, but the app itself, the chat app, is called he just named it Quick Start App. So that it's trippy.
I'll tell you why I call it Quick Start App. It's basically a Quick Start app. So if you search for Google Chat API Quick Start, there's one tutorial, takes less than maybe an hour to get all set up if you have
Hopefully
Google
less
Workspace.
if you have all this stuff, yeah.
And then what I had to do is like look up Google Chat APIs that I can use, like create a space, create members, invite members, create a chat space message, all this fun stuff. It's all API based. Like I only had to click a button and it created all the space, added the members, and added all the messages. So that's one good use case of the chat API.
Yeah, to automate all that. And actually, I got the questions from Gemini. I was like, Gemini, think of 20 onboarding questions and answer them for me. So we really tried to work as little as possible to create this stuff. No. But it's true. It was so much faster. I was able to create 20 questions. You were able to automate all that stuff. So it makes it faster. It works smarter, not harder, right?
Yes.